Like cooking, everything has a recipe.
A set of instructions to follow in order to gain a certain result.
Music is no different.
Be it ingredients for a dish, a set list for an amazing show,
Or a release strategy for a successful launch.
these are all recipes.
Hi, we're your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brandon.
Come and join us in our kitchen as we go through the Music Maker's Cookbook.
Let's get cooking.
Welcome to the Music Maker's Cookbook, the podcast where we help independent artists cook up some recipes for success in the music industry.
The extra emphasis by pause.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
was great. Yeah.
I'm trying to learn a little bit more about speech and like public speaking and presentation to really grab the audience's attention.
I like that.
Not be afraid of the pause.
You can't be afraid of the
That
pause.
is so against my personality, though.
Same.
I just go. I talk.
I mean, you know me. I just say
yeah.
stuff. Like it just doesn't even make sense half the
Yes,
time.
that's how communication happens. You say things, I listen,
Well,
and then I respond with things.
Yeah, but typically it's a lot of filler, and yeah, I don't do pause as well.
Filler can be good in food. Stuffing's great.
Oh,
Dude.
we're getting close to that time.
We are. We're
getting
recording
close.
this at the end of literally the last day of August.
Yeah.
This will probably come out early, mid-September,
Mm-hmm.
which is the second to last episode on the live music series that we're doing.
It's sad.
I'm kind of excited about it.
Yeah?
Yeah, because then after that we can
You just hate
kinda,
live sound.
I'm the guy who does live
I
sound.
know.
So yes, but no. Well, it'll allow us to dive more deeply into some of these topics because
Yeah.
this whole series has been pretty broad.
It's true.
Talking about the whole scope of it as a whole. So if you just kind of are getting into it or want to get some basic ideas and you haven't listened to the rest of the series, go back. It starts at episode 11, I think.
Yep.
If you've been following along, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming along with us.
Yeah, tagging along. So before we dive into the meat and potatoes today, we always do like a quick appetizer to kind of get the conversation going.
Mhm.
We've actually been talking for the past hour and a half, so
We
we're pretty
have.
loose, but I still have something I want to talk about.
Let it rip. I can only imagine what this is going to be about.
Yeah, so just kind of, we talked about merch in the last episode.
Okay, I did not picture this going like this.
No?
No, there's something else, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, I just want to talk about the importance of how like small things can make a big impact to the fans and also like the people you work with.
Mhm.
And if they're involved with it, like they might want to share it and help represent you. We talked about this last episode, but so I run a studio. Brandon runs a studio. Studio 222 is for Brandon. Mine is SWS Recordings. And I'm assuming you've gotten like thank yous or letters from bands you've worked with or things in
Yes.
the past or some
Mhm.
cool tidbits.
Yeah.
I recently received a vinyl in the mail from like 2 days ago from a client who I've been working with for, I want to say 9 years.
Wow.
His last album came out maybe 4 years ago.
Mhm.
He's been on hiatus making music because he's, gone away and whatnot.
Gotcha.
But I recently received it in the mail. I didn't even know he pressed it to vinyl until recently.
That's
He
so
sent
cool.
it to me. He signed it. He gave me 2 extra copies to give to like my family.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, this is a really cool thing to have. So I immediately went to my studio and put it up in the corner. So now it's on display. But it was also really interesting because it's kind of like a time capsule of my studio because
Yeah.
his album art was a picture of him walking down the hallway of my studio.
Oh, nice.
And he commissioned someone to water paint it. So it's him in that photo, but it's water painted. And then the back of it is a picture of, you've seen the bike next to the trail next to my studio
Yes,
with the
yes.
flowers in
Yep.
it. That's the picture on the back of the album.
Oh, dude, nice.
So it's like, it's kind of my studio, but on his album. It's just a really cool thing.
That's awesome, dude.
So that really got me excited about it. Got me thinking about the project again. We reached out. We had a really good conversation. We haven't talked in a while, but it also made me think about some other things that I've gotten. I've gotten thank you letters. I've gotten other pieces of like vinyl or cassettes. Someone literally typed up a letter to me from a typewriter that they found at a thrift store or whatnot.
That's sweet.
Yeah. And I talked to him afterwards. I'm like, hey, this is really cool. I really like what you're doing. He's like, oh yeah, whenever somebody buys anything from our store, we'll literally type up a custom letter for them and ship it out with whatever they order or just like a thank you for it. And just that little extra touch. I'm like, that's so cool.
That's super cool.
Like I literally like pinned it on the board in my studio.
That's
So I'm like,
sweet.
this artists did do this. So I just wanted to say thank you, Colin. I appreciate the Ship and Sail album that you sent
that's
to me.
great, man. That's great, dude.
Yeah, it literally, after we talked about merch, the importance of, it tells a story.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It goes to show though, it is important.
And now the vinyl is like permanently sitting up like on the top wall in my studio.
That's
so
sweet,
if anybody
dude.
ever was like, hey, what's that? I'm like, oh Yeah, there's a story behind it.
That's awesome, dude.
So what kind of things have you gotten from?
Stickers and shirts.
Yeah.
Maybe a nice email, a couple text messages.
I got it.
So that's
I've got
about
a
it.
couple of shirts.
That's about it. Which I'm grateful for, of course. You know what I'm saying? But
shirts
nothing,
can be cool.
Nothing like that, though. Nothing
No?
like that. Yeah, it hasn't been anything like super. I guess like I'm thinking out of the woods, but like I mean, just super like you don't see it every day, right?
Yeah.
Like so, but yeah, stickers, shirts like that, kind of like the memorabilia stuff like that has been pretty cool. So yeah, so generally just those kinds of things, but yeah, no vinyls or anything like that, not yet. But if somebody would want to,
Vinyl's expensive.
it's really expensive,
And it takes a long
I'm
time.
surprised like he didn't come back to you and say, "I want to press this to vinyl. Can you make a couple changes for me?" Because I know the vinyl pressing and all that stuff is a little bit different with how you have to sometimes deliver it.
It is, but most places where they press vinyl, like a lot of these places know that, hey, you're not probably don't know a master engineer that can master to vinyl,
Right.
and as long as you give us a master that's pressed for digital distribution, they can then apply their curve for the vinyl pressing.
Totally.
Because there's still enough dynamics. A lot of digital distribution isn't like CD where it's super limited.
Exactly.
So it still works. That's what a lot of these companies will do. They'll
Gotcha.
supply their own curve.
Gotcha. That makes sense though.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So worked out great.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
You're
so-
gonna have to show me it next time I come over.
I will. I'll point it out to you.
Please, please, man. That's sweet, man. That's sweet.
Yeah. So as we talked about last episode, your merch is a very great representation of your brand, and it's important to have in brand, put them together. How do you represent your brand live on stage?
What a transition. When does it become a point where we don't
Call
talk
out?
about the transitions?
Never.
I think we always call it out, right?
I think we're just two dumb boys who will point out the things that we do.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
I'm sure at points we've been like, oh, that was pretty good. Oh, yeah, he pointed out a pun. Like we'll call things out all the time.
Yeah, right?
We're smart. But yeah, representing yourself on stage. It's not just in social media, not just in your art, your songs, your album art, your promotion. Once you're on stage, you need to fully represent yourself too, so that people can fully experience what you're about. You may be thinking, Sean, this is the first episode I've ever listened to of you guys. I just started making music literally yesterday. It's a very specific thing I'm calling out. But even if that's not you, you may be thinking that, hey, I don't really have my brand identified or my style or specifically what my music's about easily identifiable. I haven't really discovered what that is yet. Well, good news. On episode 2, we talked about how you can do that, how you can find your 3 core values of your music so that you can easily keep it in mind and use that to influence other creative decisions, as well as we talk about how to put together a set of images on Pinterest to help visualize what your style is. You can use that to define your own style on stage. You can use it to showcase photographers or videographers so that they can put together stuff that represents your brand, make sure it's done right. So go back and listen to episode 2 if you haven't decided what your brand is. If you have watched episode 2 or you've just been doing it and you've fell into and decided what your kind of style is, then this is going to be the episode for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I still think the Pinterest thing is just, oh my God tier. Like seriously, because it's like one of those things where you can send it to people and people can see what your image is. You can have just a bunch of different stuff on there and like you can all coordinate that way. And I'm sure we're going to get into that in a second, but just so cool though, dude.
I just remembered in the last episode, we talked about our 2 episodes ago, episode 14. We talked about how it's important to collaborate with other artists, especially if you're doing like an event or whatnot. I forgot to mention you can create like a shared Pinterest board with all the other artists on the ticket, so you can identify, like visualize what the event theming and styling is going to be, so you can all be on the same page. Man,
well, now we got to go back and re-record it.
the whole thing.
Damn.
We posted it yesterday. Anyways, that's enough of me rambling on. What kind of things can you use to represent yourself on stage?
So you can do a couple different things, and really, I think it comes down to a couple different main topics that we're going to touch on, and that is like clothing, your hairstyle, which is actually pretty important, believe it or not, especially for a couple of reasons we're going to get into later, because this kind of also spills over into maybe some post-production stuff. I know we're talking about live aspect stuff, but this also includes like music videos, band photos. So I might as well just talk about it right now since we're already on that subject.
Yeah,
so like if you're going to do like, if you have sit-in musicians, like we were talking about in episode...
that'd be 13, I
13,
believe.
yeah. And you use those same sit-in musicians to do photos with, and you know that's your band, right?
Yeah.
You're also you're gonna have to coordinate hairstyles there, right? Because like these sit-in musicians could come from a variety of different places, and just making sure that you're on point with the brand itself, that's really important. And then now that spills over into live as well, right? It's gonna be really hard to have somebody cut their hair for you, right? So you want to make sure it's within reason. And
I didn't even think you were going to go to hair.
Yeah, I'm going to hair first because it's like top of mind right now.
Put a hat on?
You can put a hat on as long as it fits your brand and your aesthetic. I don't know any cases that really wouldn't work with a hat.
Yeah, unless there's a lot of different styles of hats.
Exactly. Because like you have Western cowboy hats, you had regular era fitted caps, right?
Yeah, bucket hats.
Exactly.
There's balloon hats.
Fedoras. Balloon hats.
Yeah.
What is a balloon hat?
Like, you ever go to a carnival where like the person
blows
up the balloons and they twist them around?
Then you have the hats with the little fan on top, like the little propellers.
Oh yeah, like the stereotypical 80s baby child hat. The rainbow one with the little propeller.
That would be an awesome aesthetic, though.
If it's your
if it's your thing, right? Because like it would be something to stick out with. And then like kind of going back to other things of that nature, like clothing and stuff, it's really important to coordinate with that, because
clothing is the big one that's easy to get other people on board.
It is. It's really tough just because everybody has their own way that they like to dress, and like they would probably want to dress like that on stage. But in this case, it might not fit the overall brand aesthetic. Mm-hmm. So I guess like a couple different examples, I guess we can kind of go into with that before I kind of touch on we touch on more specific things with clothing is.
Let's visualize. Let's give you some examples of bands that are currently doing it.
Exactly. So I think the first one I want to start out with, because they're pretty well known, is Slipknot. Slipknot has this whole aesthetic going on with their masks, and I'm sure if you've seen them by now, you know that is the case. At their earliest era, there was masks and jumpsuits, and then as they went on, it went to like more of like the blue collar mechanic suits. It transitioned to that with masks, but with different masks. And then I'm not sure what they do nowadays. I haven't kept up with them as well, but they have this aesthetic that they meet every time, right? Every member of the band, which was at one point like 9 members or something like that, they all dressed the part because that was their theme.
And while it does change, it's consistent when it changes.
Exactly. Now, if somebody was up there wearing khakis and a blue polo, that might look a little strange, and Slipknot isn't Slipknot, right?
What's that Best Buy employee doing up there?
I didn't even realize it was Best Buy, but it's so true. That is one really, I guess, extreme example, because that is their aesthetic. That's their theme.
They committed fully to the full dress, the mask, like that's their thing. Kiss has done something similar.
Exactly.
Where they got the full face paint, the spiked boots, and that's one that has been consistent throughout the decade.
Yes.
Instead of changing per album.
Yes. Now somebody just like Kiss, like Motley Crue, did not keep that similar trend into the 90s and then into today, right? Where they used to dress all like glammed out and stuff. That kind of fell apart as they went on, but that was their aesthetic back in the day. Now they just dress, I think, just like more casual metal. Honestly, that's kind of like what it feels like. Yeah. But like these aesthetics change too, right? So do you have an example that you want to throw out there?
Couple. Let's stick with like some of the larger ones from now, and then we'll tackle.
We'll kind of funnel into the more local ones.
That are doing it right. It's like Phoebe Bridges or Bridgers.
Yep.
Which one is it? Bridges.
I thought it was
Bridgers. Phoebe. Her whole.
It is Bridgers.
Her whole backline dresses up in skeleton, like a skeleton suit, and that's kind of consistent amongst everyone, all the artists, all the people performing in the backline. So there's that consistency there. Even like Bruno Mars, with its solo stuff, or whether he's in Silk Sonic that you brought up, they have a particular vibe to it. And while we brought up Slipknot and Phoebe Bridges, where it's like this specific outfit where everyone wears the jumpsuit or everyone wears the skeleton, Bruno Mars has more of a thematic vibe, where and his stuff's changed over the
It has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really, it's just kind of that, fashionable, laid back, kind of comfortable party vibe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't know. I'm not a fashionista. I don't know exactly what these terms are. But it's not like everyone's wearing the same exact piece of clothes.
Right.
It's it's more of an era, more of a vibe, more of a basic color scheme. Like no one's wearing neon, no one's wearing anything too bright.
Exactly.
They're muted, but they still have good colors, like oranges and whatnot.
Yep.
So you can take a more relaxed vibe route versus a particular set of clothing.
Yeah.
Kind of like you said when he's in Silk Sonic, it's more like 70s era.
ish theme.
Yeah. So they got like the muted, colorful blazers and jackets and stuff and things like that. So it's less so this shirt versus this kind of shirt.
Totally. And like what's really important to mention too, I think, especially with the Bruno Mars and the Anderson .Paak example of Silk Sonic, is that their branding and their theme matches how their music sounds. Like you can put it to a T. They wear that burnt orange blazer or whatever, maybe at some points. It's a very 70s vibe like we were talking about. And man, it just melts like butter into the music, right? It's just like the extra detail on top that really puts it over the edge and sells it to you and makes it entertaining. It's really the glue. I know we use glue all the time as engineers. It's really the glue though that pulls it together on stage.
People do listen with their eyes, be it lights or how you dress, which we'll talk about lights later.
Yeah.
But whether it's lights, how you dress, how you guys interact on stage, the energy you're bringing to it, it definitely influences the energy and the way people are hearing the songs.
Absolutely.
And as you mentioned, a color scheme can represent the sound of your music and it can add to it, which is why we brought up Pinterest earlier, is if you're not sure, I don't know what colors represent my sound. Well, put together a whole board. Doesn't even have to be artists or live performances. It can just be landscapes or real like locations, coffee shops, whatever it is. Just put together a whole bunch of it and you'll start to see patterns form. If you put together a bunch of landscapes and stuff and you find out like to represent your music in your mind or represent what it's about in your mind, after maybe you have 20, 30, 40 pictures in it, you might realize like, hey, there's a bunch of orange and reds in here.
Yeah.
So maybe orange and red represents my music. Or hey, there's a lot of black and white. So I'm just going to wear a lot of black and white.
Right.
You can kind of put together images that relate to your sound, but aren't super specific to kind of give you that overall broad vibe of it.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on a couple more examples too, now that we're kind of going more broad strokes.
Yeah.
Maybe just use some genres as an example, right?
Go for it.
So the first one I want to mention is the metalcore genre, especially back in the day where the attire was all black, skinny jeans, black Vans, like down to the T, and almost the entire band would dress like this. And it was like a very, very cool aesthetic to kind of build off of. And it was even in every music video too. I'm thinking of like the crabcore style, like Attack and stuff like that. But they all had that same aesthetic. It was black, like either like a crew neck, black shirt, black skinny jeans, black Vans, black socks, black nails, black hair. Like it was down to a T, right? Then you move over into maybe country where you have
the plaid,
the plaid flannels,
jeans,
the denim jeans, the cowboy boots, or maybe you have like more of a, I want to say loafer boots. It's slipping my mind what those are called, but you have the brown boots or something like that. You have this aesthetic that you all build off of. Yeah. And then the last one I wanted to mention was like hip hop. You have more designer name in there, right?
Yeah.
You have to flash those maybe more designer-ish brands, whether it's Gucci or it's something a little smaller like Purple Jeans or something like that, right? Where you're constantly toting these around because that's a part of the aesthetic of hip hop. Yeah. So now that we're kind of talking about this broad strokes of it, like just the generalizations, and of course this isn't applicable to every single band, every single artist, but that's generally the trends that we see.
Yeah, and if you really want to talk about an era that really everybody did it, just think about the Woodstock era, the psychedelic hippie rock era.
Exactly.
That was pretty much every band. They all put their own spin on it, but that was a design philosophy that influenced a whole genre. So do things that obviously help you stand out and keep you consistent, but maybe necessarily don't go too crazy with it.
Definitely. And as long as it matches your
Unless
aesthetic.
you want to.
Right. And as long as it matches your band aesthetic, right? Or your band theme. So someone that I work with, and that actually you've worked with before too, and if not, we're just all good friends at the end of the day, right? Is this band called Boys and Ties. We're currently recording a couple things with them, which is really cool. But their aesthetic on stage is that they wear a dress shirt and a tie. And they all do that, right?
And they're boys.
And they're boys, right? And that's their aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it really well, and like that's how people recognize them, right? And it's all coordinated to fit that, and I think it's just so cool, like how they tied that in with each other. Personal example for me, when I was doing a sit-in musician thing with my buddy Dan Cameron, we had to go do this country show at the Magic Stick in Detroit, and we all coordinated what we were going to wear. We wanted to match that country theme because it was like a huge country battle of the bands night for the radio station. And I wore like a flannel, the jeans, you know, and then the boots, you know, and that was my aesthetic. Now my guitar didn't match because it was like a 7-string guitar, but that's what I was using at the time, right? So like if the instruments work too, you can go down to the instruments, right? Yeah. But you know, that's within reason, because you can go, it can get really expensive if you try to do that too, right? And you might not want to use what you want to actually use or feel comfortable playing. Yeah. And then the last one I want to mention is my buddy David Terrell. I remember he went on tour. It had to have been near COVID times. I remember talking to Meshach, the bass player, and he was saying how they all coordinated how they were going to look for David's music. And David plays like a Tame Impala, like Mac DeMarco kind of vibe that like kind of coordinates with each other, which is super cool. And then they dressed the part to make it look like that's what they were suiting, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just really important to have this extra cherry on top, right? And like I said, it's kind of the glue that holds these things together, because like Sean was saying, people do listen with their eyes. Mm-hmm. And it's really important to nail that down and maybe even be able to play into that sound too, if you can.
For sure. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, I briefly talked about it earlier. In addition to clothing and how what you wear that aids into the music, other things you can do that visually represent your sound on a stage could be lighting. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of times venues will supply basic lighting, or they'll have, like some of the larger ones will have a lighting guy on the property who will take care of it for you. And if that's the case, you don't really want to haul around a whole lighting rig. Maybe just go like, hey, we use a lot of blues, or we use a lot of reds, or we use a lot of greens. Mm-hmm. Just kind of give them a heads up of like, hey, this kind of lighting represents the vibe. Because if you're really high energy, very active kind of sound where you want to get people up on their feet moving around, you don't want him having a very deep blue or purple on the stage. So... And if most lighting guys, they've done it enough. They know, hey, this song has this kind of energy, this kind of light. Mm-hmm. But it never hurts to just be like, hey, this is kind of what we do. But a lot of situations, you're not going to have a lighting crew. And if you decide that that is an important part of how you want to represent yourself, there's plenty of affordable lighting options out there. Yeah. And like there's some basic things you can do. Put some lights on either side of the drum kit to uplight it, shoot a specific color on. Yeah. Some of them even have... sound triggers. Now, I don't necessarily like sound triggers all the time. It can look cheesy when done improper.
Yeah, for sure.
But if it's part of your process, that can be kind of cool. If you really want to dive into it and invest into it, you can actually run a whole live rig using a MIDI system.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, and especially if you decide you want to have a specific set list that you do gig after gig, you can have your whole and like click track for everything to follow along with, and backing tracks and whatnot. You can have the whole lighting rig set to this, so that every time it's the same lighting changes every show you ever go to. Yep. And that can also visually represent what you're doing, and you don't have to worry about like, oh well, this song I want to be more blue because it's more sad, and this one I want to be more yellow because it's brighter or whatever. Yep. You can just take care of it.
Yep. Set it and forget it.
Yeah. Now, so not necessarily lighting doesn't have to be a big thing. This is purely optional depending on how you kind of want to represent yourself. A lot of genres don't rely very heavily on lighting. I know EDM does.
EDM definitely does for sure. Yeah.
So just more things to keep in mind, video walls and whatnot.
Yeah.
In addition to that, other ways you can kind of, do you have anything to add to lighting? Or?
I don't think so. That one's pretty much self-explanatory.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go, fog machines and pyrotechnics, but that is so far advanced and stage production and stuff like that, and the budgets for that are absolutely massive, and some venues won't allow it.
Yeah.
So you would have to be almost like a AAA artist to even come close to things of that nature, right? So
Not necessarily. The band I worked with 2 weeks ago in Wayne had pyrotechnics.
Really?
And a fog machine.
Okay.
They were an AC/DC tribute band.
Were they outside?
It was outside in a band shop.
That's yeah.
Well, and also they communicated with us beforehand of,
Gotcha.
hey, we have this, we'd like to do it. Are we able to? So if you do do pyrotechnics or whatnot, try to communicate it beforehand.
Yeah.
There's also a band, there's a DJ I worked with, I want to say 6 years back, who he DJ'd it, but he had 2 violinists that performed during the show. So he played, his DJ set and they played violin during it. And they had like 5 firewall, like a firewall basically in front of the stage that would like activate and move with the music. So that was a really cool show.
That's really cool.
And the violins like really add emphasis to it. This was like the peak of was it Lindsey Sterling?
Okay.
That whole movement. So like violin EDM was huge.
Totally.
But it was a really cool show.
That sounds sweet.
It was a New Year's show. Maybe there's about 500 people in the room. So it's depending on how deep you want to get into it, and if you decide it's part of your aesthetic, one, communicate it with the venue.
You have to.
You.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, make sure it's an available option for you to do. And then if you can, there's ways you can control it. And that can really visually represent what you're about, because people are going to remember like, oh man, I saw this awesome violin band that had fire going everywhere. It was so cool.
Totally. Yeah. And if you're, this isn't legal advice or financial advice, but I would say that it's probably pretty important to have insurance if you're doing pyrotechnics.
Yes.
So yeah, if you're going to go that route, probably look into some insurance for sure, just in case, you never know.
But in addition to that, there's other visual ways you can represent your brand and yourself on stage that help solidify you and your name to people who are in the audience. If you do like lighting or lights or your dress code, it helps get across the vibe and connect everything visually to the music. That helps the whole experience be more impactful, but it maybe not necessarily tells people or reminds them that, hey, this is what the band's called.
Yeah.
So it sticks in their mind. I remember the experience, but who is the band again? Really basic one you can do is just get a drum head with your band logo or name on it.
You can even put like LED neon lights inside of the drum like kit. You know what I'm saying? Which would be really cool. Yeah. It helps illuminate not only the drum head, but it also is like, oh, that looks kind of sweet. Maybe I want to do that one day,
It pulls attention to it. So people are like, oh, look at that. That's what the band's called.
Yep.
So that it helps them know who you are, and that ties it in with the whole experience. Yep. You can also just kind of put signs on stage.
Yeah.
The band I worked with last night has I want to say maybe a 6x6 frame, and they just went to a local printer shop and printed out the name of the band on a pretty thick sign, like a fabric sign, and then they just attached it to the wooden frame, and it's got a stand, one of those like speaker stands or lighting stand mounts on the back of it, so they can just pop up a stand and click it on top. They can raise it up to like 15 feet in the air. Yeah. Or they can keep it low and move it wherever they need to. So it's a really good rig to put the name of the band out there. So that way anyone who's in the audience is like, I like this band. I want to hire them for my daughter's wedding, or I want to hire them for my company thing, or I run this venue. I want them out at my place, or I have this festival I've got going on. They're really good. Now they know who you are. Yep. Because I had somebody come up to me during the show and say, "Hey, do you work with the band?" And I'm like, "I work with the venue, not necessarily the band." He's like, "Do you have a business card of theirs? Because I'm looking to hire them." It's like, unfortunately, I don't. But he's like, "Okay, I remember what they're called." I said, "You can email them. It's just the band's name." And he gave me a business card of his that I just passed along. But now that he knows what they're called, it visually helps kind of stick out. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, you can get creative with it. A weird thing that I've seen is a similar thing. Somebody mounted a giant QR TV. Code. Oh, I mean, actually, yes. They mounted a TV. It was like a 45-inch TV that they made vertical, and they put on a post again for a speaker stand, and they hung it up on the side of the stage. And they had upcoming events or festivals they were playing, rotating. They had a QR codes to their website on the bottom. And they also had a page where you could scan it and submit to a playlist. You could like go to their music immediately from it, or you could submit songs for their set list. So you can kind of involve, they had it running before the show. So you can do things like that allow you to kind of program things out, make it interactive for the audience. Yeah. It's actually have a live poll. If you have like who's been to our show before, or what songs do you want us to play? And then you can show the results, or you can actively feed it to, if you tweet and you hashtag our band, it'll pop up on here. It's a nice lighter way to do it as kind of a, smaller group that's just starting.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I feel like that's almost a better option than doing just the static backdrop, static sign, right? Because then you can do whatever you want. You can change it. You can make the theme according to the nights. You can play with different things like that. Like you were saying, like show like social media feeds if somebody tweets at the band, or do a poll, or just have a general like visualizer along with the show. Like if you do like lo-fi music, you could do the girl sitting in like the YouTube video, the girl sitting in the room on that thing, and would totally get the aesthetic, right?
During the concert, you can do crazy things with it.
And it's so, I would argue it's almost more affordable to do that than it would be to actually keep on printing out different things, right? Because the cost of printing is going to eventually surpass the cost of a TV and like a stand, a movable stand, right? And then you just need a laptop, and I'm sure like people either have an extra one laying around these days now, because it's not totally uncommon to have multiple in the closet, right? Like, oh, this is my upgrades, so why not try that? I like that idea a lot.
Even aside from a laptop, a lot of modern TVs have USB interaction. So if you just save what you want on a thumb drive and plug it in, it'll do like an auto slideshow.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. And you can even tie, if you really want to get crazy with it, you can do like wireless transmission HDMI into the TV if you have like a drone or someone with a camera in the crowd. Like there's rigs that can do that if you want to kind of have something cool for people to watch on the side.
Totally. Or if you want to put a GoPro on the top of your headstock and have people looking at your fingers while you're playing guitar.
During the show, you can have something like more interactive video.
Or have a drummer cam, right? And have the drummer looking out at the crowd or whatever the case may be. Super cool.
Yeah. But the downsides to that is it is more expensive.
It is, especially if you do the camera route.
Yeah. It's a lot of technology. Technology is great when it works. Doesn't always work.
They can break.
Especially when you're doing wireless signals or whatnot. If you're using cabling, you're limited by how long you can run with certain kinds of cables. HDMI is a max of 50 feet, things like that. And then also, if you are getting bigger, if you do want to do all these different camera angles and whatnot, and you want to have a larger screen, because you're kind of limited by how big you can go with the TV. If you go into video walls and all that, it gets very, very expensive.
Definitely.
And now you're adding time to your setup and time to your teardown. And there's a lot to keep in mind, but just like a small, you can get a 40-inch TV for what, 150 bucks nowadays?
It's cheap.
Yeah. If you want to throw it on a stand, try it out. It can be a worthwhile investment. You can, as we said, change it. So that's just another option that I've seen some bands do to showcase their group, get people involved, get people engaged.
Definitely. And
make it so that they remember the name, not just the performance.
Right. It's fantastic.
That's it for that segment. I'm done talking.
How you segue between songs is really important to you, because like Sean said, your words represent your music too. This actually kind of goes into like what I was going to say at the end too, is like, it also goes into how you interact with people and how you act on stage too. Not only during the show, but before the show and then after the show as well. But for a couple of examples though, with how you carry yourself on stage, like if you swear a lot, you're probably not a family band. Like I know for myself, I swear all the time, and I know that I would not be family friendly. It's so tough. It's so tough for me. I think I've been swearing since the 4th grade. I'm such a bad seed. But so that's like one of the examples. Do you have another example you want to throw out?
Well, we talked about the way you talk represents your brand. Kind of like going back to if you're kind of genre specific, if it's like a throwback to the 70s or whatnot, or more like psychedelic rock or whatnot, you can incorporate that lingo into how you talk on stage.
That's groovy.
Kind of add up to it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The old slang.
Yeah. And most genres have their own slang and lingo to it. So communicating that on stage keeps it consistent. But also the way you don't talk during your show is also a reflection on your brand and your music. If your brand is just the tortured artist, the singer-songwriter, and you just want to like walk up, sit on stage, spend like 30 seconds just looking at the crowd, and then just start, that can be part of your aesthetic too. Literally saying nothing can be, consistent with your brand. It can be kind of powerful and interesting in a show.
It'll definitely help you stick out.
Yeah.
That's for damn sure.
Yeah. So you can go in the opposite direction. How you talk represents it. Now you don't talk represents reverence. So just keep all this in mind. But another example is like, just stay consistent with the energy of your song. It can be kind of hard, especially if things are going on in your personal life and you're really happy, energetic music. It can be hard, but it is a performance. Sometimes you have to act to really get it across. And, there's good nights and bad nights. We're not saying always be on top of your game. But if you're all about partying and having a good time, you want to, on stage, jump around, have that energy, like move around, like play with the band, have the guitarist walk over to the bass player and jam out for a bit.
Yeah.
Do some fun things on stage to get people engaged. We did a band a month ago, local one called Magic Bus.
Okay.
And they're a 70s cover band that does all the Woodstock era stuff. And for their finale, they have two guitarists. They walked up to each other. They took their guitars, put them behind the other guitarist, leaned down, and were playing the guitar on each other's backs while spinning in circles.
Interesting.
Super fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
It's different. Different.
Just different. And it's stuck out in my mind right now.
Yeah.
That kind of performance behind it. One of my favorite bands that I discovered from live, I saw Shinedown, I want to say 7-8 years ago.
Nice.
And their opening band was a band called Nothing More.
Mm-hmm.
And they were phenomenal stage presence, performance. The music was great. I actually liked them more than Shinedown that night.
Yeah.
Instantly they were done. I went down, bought their vinyl. It was great.
Powerful.
But what they did was they had a really weird contraption where they had, I think it was a 7 or 8 string guitar, and they had strapped it to a U-shaped frame at the top and the bottom. So it's just like a freestanding guitar on this frame. And during the final song, it's they're in the middle, and at some point the guitar stops playing his guitar, and he walks over to this guitar and he starts playing that guitar. And then later the bass player stops and he goes over and he starts playing the same guitar. So there's 2 people playing the same guitar. And then the singer stops and he starts playing the guitar too. So now there's 3 people playing guitar. And then the drummer stops and he starts hitting the guitar with his sticks.
Wow.
And like doing like shit on it. And then they start unhooking the top or the bottom and they swing it around the frame. So this guitar is swinging around front and back, and they're all playing it and spinning on the axis, and they're just like throwing this thing around on stage. I don't know how they rehearsed it. I don't know how the hell it sounded good, but it did.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there watching like, how the fuck did they come up with this?
That's sweet.
This is so cool.
Yeah.
And things like that, like the way you perform on stage, that energy got me so hyped that I immediately went down and bought their merch.
Yep.
And added them to my Spotify playlists, and I listen to them to this day. I love them.
Totally.
So things like that make someone feel such a strong emotion that they have to participate. That's what the end goal is.
Absolutely. I mean, even like something as elementary as the Beatles, right? I mean, this goes way back in the day where they're up on the stage, they have their guitars up to their fucking chest, and they're just, it's such a vibe. It fit their music. Like let's be honest though, the crowd
very era appropriate too.
It is because you do have to take that into consideration because things were way different back in the day. But the crowd was still super into it. They definitely did not match the crowd's energy. They definitely did not. But they didn't have to, right? No. Like because they already had their own aesthetic, and the crowd loved them for how they acted too, right? So they expected to see them doing their jam, right? Yeah. So even as elementary as Elvis too. Right.
Yeah, those stanky legs.
Yeah, he broke barriers with doing this.
They had to film him from the waist up.
Yeah.
It was like
totally risque back in the day. I mean, compared to now, I mean, holy shit.
Now we got WAP.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's very hard to even fathom that, right? But I mean, he had a certain aesthetic. He went on stage and he partied, right? Like going back to your party thing is like he went on there. He's like, you expect to have a good time, So, I mean, he's a hound dog.
Gawking all the time. But no,
shout out Big Mama Thornton. Is that what her name is?
I have no idea what you're referring to right now.
Really? She's the original one that wrote.
Oh, is she?
Hound Dog, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, there's so many ways to, and the more you perform, the more comfortable you're going to get with it, the more you're going to be able to either decide what you're all about or take the energy from the crowd and see what works, what they're responding well to, and refine it. But it's good to keep it in mind so that you can get there quicker or start putting things in place or try new things. to see, hey, maybe this works. Maybe if I try this at the next show, maybe how will they respond to this? Will this get people to engage in me? If I like put this TV on stage with the QR code, will this get people interested in what I'm doing? Like have a good experience if we all dress the same, or people approach us before or after the show and, communicate well and build like this kind of community going. Keep these things in mind.
You know, it would be kind of
Try things
cool.
out.
Just to sidetrack, just an idea that I just thought of. Anybody can take this and make it their own. I hope that they do. But you give out 3D glasses at a show, and then you have those, TVs or whatever, and they're like 3D. How cool would that be, man? And if you can implement that somehow, that'd be awesome. But yeah, I don't know, just an idea.
That'd be kind of cool.
Wouldn't that be different?
Yeah.
I don't know how it'd work, but somebody smarter than me will figure it out and use it. So I hope that happens.
Well, so that's the thing. Like, be creative with it. We're artists. We're creative. I think if like you were kind of a cinematic rock or cinematic, whatever genre, fusion band,
arcade rock, or like,
it could be cool.
Yeah, or like, what is it? Nerdcore hip hop or something like that. Might be kind of cool if it's like an aesthetic, because you could do like a whole comic theme. Dude,
go fucking crazy.
We're giving somebody ideas right now. Yeah. And I highly recommend that person takes it and makes it their own, then sends it back to us, because I want to see that in real life.
For sure. I'd love to
I would
see
go
it
to the
too.
show. I'd go to the show. Just tell me. I'd go. I just want to be a part of it.
I just want to be part of it, man. All right. So we covered, I think that's all I have to say on that last part about segues between songs and keeping up the energy and whatnot.
Yeah. I think we've hit on pretty much everything we wanted to really talk about. The only thing I have is just like an overarching thing is, when you go to do these things, be original, but like within reason too, right? Like you do have to match the genre in a certain way, but you do want to be different from the genre in a certain way too, but within the genre means sometimes. Or if your thing is to just go over the top and be just totally different, just fucking try it at this point, right? Because you can always change your aesthetic later.
Oh yeah.
This is a fluid thing. This is something that evolves over time. Like we were saying, like there was like the first era Slipknot, second era Slipknot, and they change their masks every time they change eras, right? Then you have, wow, I swear. I can't
believe we brought up eras the whole time. We never mentioned Taylor Swift.
I was gonna say, we bring her up every episode, I think. But Taylor Swift has changed eras multiple times. She's on Eras tour right now. And it's fluid. It changes. You change as a person or as a band or as people, right? So match that energy that you're going with then, right? Even your music changes, so match that. But have some decent themes set, right, for your band. Overall ideas, right? Like if you're like
cohesive and recognizable.
Exactly. I want to make sure people know that we're a Hawaiian band, right? Maybe wear Hawaiian shirts and sandals on stage, or just like have that idea. I want to make sure people think that we're fill in the blank, or
how can we communicate what we're doing on multiple fronts.
Exactly. And then one of the last things I wanted to say too is like, whatever genre you're in, see how the other parts of the genre are doing it, how your counterparts are doing it, and then see what you want to take from that and then discard for yourself, right? So like maybe you can adapt a certain, if you want to wear hoodies on stage, right? Like you see another band doing that, like take that and then maybe discard wearing Vans on stage with them or something, like pick and choose. And like Sean was saying at the beginning of the podcast, a Pinterest board can help out with that tremendously. So that way everybody's on the same page and can actually visualize your vision, right? From the start. And it's not like a guess and check kind of thing where people are going to TJ Maxx, going to Marshalls and buying a bunch of shit. And you're like, that's not really what I was thinking. Because then that's just wasteful, right? Yeah. So just be on the same page. Just come up with these general ideas and then see what you like and then discard what you don't.
Yeah. Well, and a way to kind of approach it might be, so ingenuity is taking two things that exist separately and putting them together in a way that creates something new. If you're making music, I guarantee there's bands out there that you love that influence you. So there's a lot you can take from them. You take inspiration from their music. You can also look towards everything else that they do as kind of an inspiration. But your music is not exactly like their music because you also have all of your experiences and everything else that you love that you bring towards your music as well. So incorporate that into the fashion, into the stage performance and everything as well. Bring together these two things that exist separately and meld them together to make something that's, intuitive and new. So if you're stuck on, man, like I just want to do like them. Well, you're not like them.
Right.
What's different about you that you're already doing because you can't not.
Yeah.
And incorporate that.
And sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel on this, right? Like that's sometimes not the case. Sometimes it's just switching a couple of different aspects that are small, but that add up to be a big thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can go the route of disruptive innovation and just be totally different and totally obscene within the genre, right? And really stick out. Or you can just adapt, like Sean was saying, just a few different things. And like, yeah, you might like how they wear fill in the blank. You might like how they do their hairstyle like this. You might like how they have this backdrop in the background, but that's not you. Make it your own.
It's a template.
Yep.
Add on top of it.
Absolutely.
All right. So go out, figure this shit out, and represent yourself well on stage. Hopefully this conversation and these tools help you move forward with that. If you do anything really cool during your live performances, we'd love to see it.
Yes, we would.
Anything cool on stage, like the guitar that I mentioned, or anything that you put on the stage to help people remind or tell them what your band is, other than the signs and the TV and the things that we said earlier.
Yeah.
Anything that you do that makes your live performance really cool or special, even if you just want to say, hey, this is what I do. You can always reach out to us at podcast@musicmakerscookbook.com. We'd love to see it.
We'd love to.
Love to check it out. And with that said, please follow us on whatever platform you're listening to on. Give us a review. It really helps us out and gets it in front of other people who might be interested in this. Please share us with some of your musician friends that are also trying to make a living in the music industry. And if you find any value from this and you think they could find value from it, it would really help support us and help more people, be able to make a career in this, really hard industry that is to make a career in. So share it around. We're on pretty much every social media platform. So if you want more of us, you can check us out on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X,
Threads.
We're not on Threads yet, Next yet.
I am.
You are?
I'm on Threads.
Check out Studio 222 recordings.
I think it's just under my personal though.
Oh, so don't do that. And you just threw me for a loop. You just brought all this stuff up. That's not applicable.
I did. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I forgive you.
Thank you.
Brandon's done a lot of bad things to me this week. I'm not going to bring them up.
Oh, I thought you were going to start with that. And now I thought we were going to get through the whole episode without doing that.
No.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So go out.
You might as well mention it now.
Nope, not going to. Go out and cook your own recipes and have fun cooking.
Bon appetit, I guess.
No, Brandon's sad.